The animated story of this series takes place in a fantasy world called Midgard, which has a very unusual history based on how online video games work. Originally, Midgard was just the digital setting of a popular massively multiplayer online role-playing game called X-Gate Online, where players spent real-world years building characters, completing quests, and fighting monsters. However, the basic setup of the universe underwent a massive change when the entire game world suddenly transformed into a real physical reality. In this new world, the old video game mechanics are no longer just numbers on a computer screen. They have become the absolute laws of physics, chemistry, and biology. This means things like character levels, health points, magical mana pools, and specialized combat skills are tangible forces that everyone can see and feel in their daily lives. If a person has a higher level, they are physically stronger, faster, and more durable than anyone else, making power levels the defining factor of the entire social hierarchy. A normal citizen might only be level 5, meaning they are completely defenseless against a level 100 monster. The universe also operates under a strict rule regarding historical balance and sovereign anchors. 200 years before the main story begins, a legendary player character known as the Black-Winged Tyrant ruled the land, but was eventually defeated and sealed away.
When this powerful figure was removed from the world, the safety of the entire planet collapsed because there was no longer a strong enough force to terrify the monsters into staying away. Demons and wild beasts began to overrun human kingdoms because the main anchor holding the world's peace together was gone. This mechanical rule turns past gaming events into real historical tragedies, forcing the people of Midgard to live with the permanent, bloody consequences of actions that were originally just part of a corporate gaming event. At the exact middle of this strange reality is the main character, who has to deal with a massive identity crisis and a heavy mental burden. Originally, this character was just a normal young man living in modern Japan who loved playing the video game as a hobby after school or work. He was incredibly good at the game and created a legendary female character named Rufus Mafal, who became the final boss and supreme conqueror of the virtual world. The trauma begins when he is suddenly pulled out of his normal life and wakes up trapped inside the physical body of his video game character. This setup creates an intense mental conflict because he still thinks like a regular, peaceful modern human boy, but his body has the natural instincts, deep voice, and arrogant attitude of a terrifying female tyrant.
Every time he speaks or moves, he has to balance his own normal, anxious thoughts against the overwhelming urge of his new body to act like a proud king who owns the world. This mental struggle is made worse by the fact that the entire world remembers Rufus as a bloodthirsty monster who tried to enslave the planet. Wherever she goes, regular people scream in fear, armies try to attack her, and historical books describe her as pure evil. This leaves the protagonist completely isolated, forcing a normal gamer to hide his true personality behind an indestructible, terrifying mask to avoid losing control. Her exact goal is to travel across the dangerous continent to locate her 12 loyal monster generals, known as the 12 Heavenly Stars, while trying to figure out who brought him into this world and how to fix a legacy that has been completely twisted by history. The main bad guys in the story operate on a massive godlike scale that changes how the characters view life and fate. While the demons on the ground act as the immediate physical threat, the true enemy hiding in the shadows is the goddess of creation, along with her puppet, the Demon King.
The motivation of this divine villain is based on absolute control and keeping the world running like a scripted theatre play. The goddess views the planet of Midgard as her personal toy box and treats the lives of humans and demons like characters in a book she is writing. Her ultimate objective is to keep an endless bloody war going between the different species forever. She believes that a perfect balance of suffering, war, and tragedy is necessary to generate energy and keep the universe from shutting down, meaning she views the deaths of millions of innocent people as useful fuel for her machine. This mindset stands in direct opposition to what the protagonist believes. While the goddess demands that everyone follow their pre-assigned destiny without questioning it, Rufus represents a chaotic glitch in the system. The protagonist believes in absolute personal freedom, free will, and the right of normal people to choose their own futures. This turns the main conflict of the show into a deep philosophical rebellion against a god who treats living beings like cheap toys, making Rufus a symbol of mortal independence. The political and social setup of Midgard makes this historical mess even more complicated, acting as a constant engine that drives the main plot forward.
After Rufus was sealed away 200 years ago, a group of warriors called the Seven Heroes took control of the human nations. To make themselves look like perfect saviours, these heroes built an entire political system based on massive lies, wiping out any good deeds Rufus ever did, and writing history books that made her look like a mindless monster. Over the centuries, these human kingdoms became politically lazy, deeply corrupt, and completely weak because they relied on a fake history to keep their power. When Rufus suddenly reappears in the world, her physical presence completely ruins the political peace that the ruling class worked so hard to maintain. Her return forces human society to face its own weaknesses, showing that the current kings are completely unprepared to fight real dangers without hiding behind old legends. The story uses these corrupt political systems to keep the plot moving, demonstrating that the real danger to the world is not just the monsters outside the walls, but the moral rot inside the human governments who would rather kill a true saviour than admit that their entire history is built on a lie. The pacing and structure of the story are carefully designed to start small and slowly build up into a massive cosmic battle.
In the early episodes, the plot moves at a steady, travelling pace, focusing on Rufus as she walks through the countryside to locate her old generals, such as the loyal beastman Ares or the dark demon Aegacaros. These early encounters feel like isolated adventures where Rufus has to prove her strength to her old friends and convince them that she has returned. This gives the viewer time to understand how the world works and see the deep loyalty her subordinates feel. However, this comfortable travel routine quickly speeds up as more generals join her team. The individual reunions turn into large-scale military movements, shifting the story away from a personal journey and dropping the characters into a full-blown world war against the demon armies. The tension rises naturally as the characters realise that the war between humans and demons is completely rigged by the goddess above, changing the show from a fun fantasy adventure into a fast-paced race to destroy the actual rules of the universe before the world is wiped clean. Visually, the animation team uses clever camera angles and physical spaces to show the audience exactly how powerful and lonely the main character feels. The direction relies heavily on dramatic vertical framing, which means the camera often looks up from the ground to show Rufus flying high in the sky with her massive black wings spread wide.
This specific look serves as a visual shorthand to remind the viewer that she is a king who stands far above regular humans and giant monsters. But the show balances this grand scale by using very tight, low-angle close-ups on her face when she is alone. These quiet shots capture the subtle shadows and worried expressions of the normal human boy trapped inside the tyrant's body, letting the audience see the hidden anxiety of a modern gamer who is forced to act tough. The layout of the battle scenes also emphasises this extreme isolation, frequently placing Rufus right in the centre of giant, empty and ruined battlefields where her allies are far away in the background, visually demonstrating that absolute power cuts you off from the rest of humanity. The world of sound and music is engineered with a similar level of high drama, using specific audio choices to make the return of a legendary ruler feel heavy and important. During the big action sequences, the soundtrack combines massive, deep electronic synthesizer noises with loud classical orchestra instruments, creating a giant wall of sound that matches the world-shaking power of her attacks. The sound design pays very close attention to small physical details, making the heavy rustle of her black feathers, the crackle of electrical magic, and the earth-shattering thud of her punches sound incredibly clear and heavy.
This intense noise is balanced by sudden dramatic drops in the music during moments of quiet reflection. When the protagonist remembers his old life or feels overwhelmed by his situation, the music cuts out completely, leaving her voice isolated in an uncomfortable silence that highlights the deep loneliness of a soul trapped in a body that does not belong to him. The final resolution of this long journey requires a complete mental change and a total sacrifice of the protagonist's original human identity. To successfully cut the strings of the goddess's script and save the world from an endless cycle of war, the gamer must completely give up his dream of ever returning to a quiet, normal life as a regular human boy. The climax of the story forces his two separate identities to completely fuse together. The protagonist has to stop being a passive player who is just watching a story happen and fully become the terrifying Blackwing tyrant, using her incredible power to fight for free will and human kindness. This transformation demands a heartbreaking sacrifice, as Rufus must willingly accept the role of the ultimate villain in the eyes of history just to become the world's true saviour.
The story finishes by showing that to defeat a corrupt cosmic order, you must have the courage to carry the hatred of the entire world on your shoulders, sacrificing your own chance at peace to ensure that future generations have the freedom to write their own stories.